This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Janet Stewart is off. Winnipeg police have charged a female hockey coach with 15 offences, including sexual assault and sexual exploitation. CBC's Alana Cole has the latest.
Winnipeg police have identified the coach as Madison Billick. They say she is 28 years old and lives in Winnipeg. Police say Billick has been charged with 15 offences. They range from sexual assault, sexual exploitation, and sexual interference to possession of child pornography and assault with a weapon. Police say they received information in October about a sexually exploitive relationship between an adult coach and a player between 2019 and 2021 and started investigating. Police won't say how old the player was in 2019, but say she was under 16 at that time.
A sexually exploitive relationship was forged, and it was over a period of approximately 2 years. So as you can imagine, no, this wasn't just limited to a rink scenario. This was a relationship that extended after hours over the course of this time with solitary meetings between the two people.
Police aren't naming the team involved here, but we are learning more about how investigators were notified. CBC spoke with Interlake Minor Hockey President Kyle Willis. He says they became aware of a social media post containing allegations of abuse.
But then that post was brought to my attention by our female director, and immediately we contacted Hockey Winnipeg, Hockey Manitoba, just to make sure we were doing the right things and telling the right people. So due to the seriousness of the incident and the accusations, everybody did really well. Like, everybody jumped right into action. RCMP was notified, City Winnipeg Police, everybody worked together.
Police aren't ruling out that there could be other possible victims. Police say Billick coached from 2018 to 2023. They say she's no longer coaching under Hockey Winnipeg, Hockey Manitoba, or Hockey Canada, but couldn't say exactly when she stopped. Billick has been released with conditions. Hockey Winnipeg and Hockey Manitoba have declined interviews. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A website some online predators use to talk to children has been shut down for good. The closure comes as Omegle settled a $22 million lawsuit. It was filed by an American woman who met her abuser on the site when she was just 11 years old. The I-Team's Caroline Bargout has more, and a warning: some of the details are graphic.
And why do you come on here?
Because I enjoy being watched.
These are some of the people you could find on Omegle. Last year, CBC News spent an hour on the website, which was designed to randomly connect strangers. What we saw was a lot of nudity and masturbation. And this man, who admitted to exposing and fondling himself in front of children the site paired him with.
If they're comfortable, I'm comfortable. It's all about consent.
Well, an underage person cannot consent legally. Are you aware of that?
You're the one who's calling it legal. I'm calling it social consent.
The Canadian Centre for Child Protection says it's people like that who are precisely the problem with this website and the reason it needed to be shut down.
I'll equate Omegle to if you took a recliner, stuck it in the middle of a playground, and had a bunch of kids walking past an adult male with his pants off. Whether we as a society would say that's a good idea. We know that's ridiculous. Well, that's essentially what Omegle was online.
She says in 2022, Omegle reported 600,000 incidents involving concerns that kids were being harmed or exploited on their platform. That works out to 1,600 a day. Arneson says, and that's just what's being reported. There are tons of instances where kids don't know they've been recorded and wouldn't think to report it.
The shutdown comes as part of a settlement agreement in a U.S. lawsuit. In 2021, an American woman known only as AM sued Omegle for $22 million for connecting her with a Brandon, Manitoba man in 2014. He was in his late 30s, while she was just 11.
According to court filings, the man who CBC News is not naming to protect the identities of his victims abused the girl for 3 years, forcing her to send him explicit photos of her engaging in sex acts until she was 15. One of AM's lawyers told CBC News they had negotiated for a permanent shutdown of Omegle as part of a settlement agreement. In exchange, Omegle avoided going to trial. Omegle's founder, Leif K. Brooks, posted a long goodbye on the website. He said, "Virtually every tool can be used for good or for evil, and that is especially true of communication tools. There can be no honest accounting of Omegle without acknowledging that some people misused it, including to commit unspeakably heinous crimes." Signe Arneson says after the Omegle shutdown, child predators were on the dark web discussing what they lost and wondering where they should go next.
This guy talked about an 11-year-old that he was grooming on the site, talked about the fact that he had introduced the 11-year-old to pornography, and then was just waiting to move it to the next step. So it's only through, the miracle that the site is no longer available online that this kid then isn't going to be further harmed.
Arneson says this should be a wake-up call. It's time to regulate the online world. The UK has moved on this, and she wants Canada to do the same for the safety of children everywhere. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It'll be another 2 weeks until Jordan Reimer's family will find out how long the man who killed her will spend behind bars. It happened in an impaired driving crash. More than 24 victim impact statements were read today in court as friends and family tried to put into words what she meant to them and how the loss has felt. CBC's Brittany Greenslade has more.
Justice for Jordan! Jordan Reimer's friends and family are still keeping her alive any way they can, in the shirts they wear to court every single day, to the memories they share outside of it each time.
There's moments, there's a few words said by people that you can't help it, but they bring back great little inside. I was smiling, outside I was crying, but yeah, that was Jordan. And she touched a lot of people.
Reimer's friends say she lit up every room with happiness and laughter, and now there's a hole everywhere they go. Those are just some of the sentiments shared in more than 40 victim impact statements read aloud at a sentencing hearing for the man who killed her in a car crash in 2022. One by one, friends read out memories of the 24-year-old. Reimer's family say her life was cut short in a senseless tragedy when Tyler Goodman got behind the wheel of his car that night and drove drunk, killing her in a collision and running away. Many needed to stop and take a breath as they pushed their words through the tears. Her hockey teammates spoke about being in a constant state of pain since her death. They say their heartache is heavier knowing that Jordan's death was preventable. Goodman addressed the family in court, apologizing, saying he's devastated with the choice he made to drive. Thoughts of that night are with me in every waking hour, he said. It will carry a lifetime impact on me. But for Jordan's family, it's too little, too late.
Those are hollow words. They mean nothing to me. There'll never be any forgiveness. I don't believe there is any true remorse. His actions that night show that.
Goodman has pleaded guilty. The Crown is seeking a 6-year sentence to charges of impaired driving causing death, while the defense is asking for 4.5. Both believe he should serve another consecutive year behind bars for leaving the scene. Jordan's mom says it's not enough.
I think we're just a little bit in disbelief and shock that sentencing is supposed to be commensurate with a crime, and this is the best that they can come up with. And that's what they're telling us our daughter's life is worth.
Goodman's mom also pleaded guilty to one charge of obstruction of justice for giving misleading information to police after the crash. Both will be sentenced on November 22nd. Brittany Greenslade, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some of the plans for the redevelopment of Winnipeg's old Capyong Barracks are starting to wind their way through City Hall. Nawe Odena is starting to take shape. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
The former Capyong Barracks have sat vacant for nearly 20 years. There was an aborted attempt by the federal government to sell the land along Kenniston Boulevard, a successful effort by 7 Treaty 1 nations to acquire it, and now a plan to transform it into Nawe Odena, a 65-hectare redevelopment that could eventually have more than 1 million square feet of commercial space and 3,000 homes or apartments.
I'm sure there's many people who look at this barren piece of land and say it sure would be nice to get some houses on there.
Most of this land is owned by the Treaty 1 nations. About a third belongs to the Canada Lands Company, a federal crown corporation. Its plans start winding their way through City Council next week. The federal and First Nations plans are supposed to fit together seamlessly.
The land uses on one side are completely compatible with the land use on the other, and they've even started to talk about some design standards that would be inherent throughout.
The plans call for commercial development along Keniston, residential buildings as high as 8 stories further west. Lower density residential, no higher than 3.5 stories, will butt up against South Tuxedo. A groundbreaking is planned for Monday, with construction slated to begin over the winter. The project is expected to be built in phases over the next 10 to 15 years. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some of Canada's biggest cities want Ottawa's help as they struggle to revitalize downtown cores that emptied out during the pandemic. CBC's Karen Paul shows us how they're trying to bring people back.
At this downtown Calgary cafe, the lunch rush isn't what it used to be.
I would be lying to say that business today in 2023 was, or is rather, as good as it was in the pre-pandemic era.
Between a crash in the oil and gas industry and COVID-19, there's a 30% vacancy rate in the nearby office towers.
In the last 10 years, this is probably the worst I've seen it on a Canada-wide basis.
In Winnipeg, more than 70 businesses have closed since the pandemic. With fewer office workers and emptier streets, issues of addictions and homelessness are ever more visible.
Dispatch to Delta 1. Are you available for a wellness check at the bus shelter?
Raising safety concerns from business leaders to residents to police.
Hey man, how's it going?
Prompting street patrols like this one.
Whether that's somebody living who needs a safe walk or somebody who's that at-risk population, wherever they might be, trying to get them help.
Advocates and business leaders are now asking Ottawa for help.
Requires a dedicated and purposeful allocation of funding.
Kate Fensky says it's time to find some solutions.
Workers absolutely play a key part in the downtown community, but we can't rely on workers alone. What is that new vision for downtown? It's about people that are here beyond the 9 to 5.
Calgary has approved a plan to repurpose empty buildings.
That's 17 total projects that will remove 2.3 million square feet of vacant space in the downtown and create 2,300 new homes.
In Winnipeg, big investments in new offices, condos, hotels, and eateries. There are also plans to renovate this mall into medical offices, apartments, and community space.
And just across the street, this former HBC building is being transformed into affordable housing and Indigenous governance and social services offices. The goal, to bring more people and life back into downtown. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Students in Garden Hill First Nation are waiting for change. The high school has issues with mold, overcrowded classrooms, and more students than ever. Students had to repeat a grade after the pandemic, and last year, mold forced them out for weeks. But as CBC's Aaron Broman reports, a new student council is bringing hope.
Dana McDougall was just voted in as Chief of Student Council. He's got a big job ahead of him.
I saw a ton of problems here before I became chief, and I want to make it more respectful.
He wants to help students at Garden Hill High find some breathing room. There are about 1,200 students between the high school and elementary school. Everyone's a grade behind after classes completely stopped during COVID, and administrators decided to hold students back a year.
We had to get out of school because the lockdowns. If COVID didn't happen, I would have been grade 10 too.
Because we're on a reserve, Wi-Fi is very slow, so like Zoom classes, they were not a thing that would happen. It was very difficult, and I feel that people's mental health was also damaged during that time.
In returning to school last year, students faced another setback.
It's kind of rough because last year they found out there was mold here. We had to move to elementary school to go school there. Having to sit in small desks, it wasn't okay with us.
The school was built about 30 years ago, and it's missing some important components, like a way to drain this water, eaves troughs, and overhangs on the roof. A wing where the mold was discovered is completely closed off, though the high school reopened this year. 4 classrooms unusable. They also had to make room for another year of students, grade 6, because the elementary is too full. Principal Peter Little worries the space issues will cause older students to leave and not come back.
We do the best we can with the number of classrooms that we have in a building. We just don't have enough space for the number of students that we have.
The cafeteria was converted into a classroom. Some classrooms are doubling up.
You have a unique situation where there's going to be 2 classes.
Yes.
So you're teaching both classes in one room.
Yep. I want the mold to be removed, so like we can finally have like classes that won't like be cluttered with students.
We need a new roof with a leakage here too.
And that moisture seeps into the walls, drains into the floor and ground. And students aren't the only ones crammed in wherever they fit. Renovations are planned for the closed-off wing, but it's been one costly fix after another. The school will soon get 4 portable classrooms thanks to some federal funding, but
priority would be getting a better school.
The new student council is making the most of the hand they've been dealt. Joshua Joy McPherson says there's lots to be thankful for.
Everyone's so nice here, honestly. Even the students, the staff.
He was recently voted in as student councillor and has helped bring change already.
My top priority is to ensure student comfort, because I'm very happy today, actually, because our cafeteria is now being used to eat in.
He says students have enough on their plate without having to worry about a school. Erin Broman, CBC News, Garden Hill First Nation.
A pedestrian died last night after being hit by a bus. Winnipeg police say they were called to Main Street between Logan and Higgins just after 5:30. The man in his 60s was rushed to hospital but later died. Police told CBC the person was not crossing the street at a designated intersection. Officers continue to investigate but say the incident isn't considered criminal in nature. With Remembrance Day coming up tomorrow, we asked some Winnipeggers whether the occasion is still relevant. Here's what they had to say.
Yeah, I feel Remembrance Day is actually more relevant today than it ever was, because modern day, we were starting to forget about the First and Second World War, just because it's been so far along. Time has passed and a lot of our veterans have passed away, but the significance of their sacrifices they made is still relevant to us.
Sad fact is, November 11th didn't end wars at all, but it serves as a continuing reminder that these wars continue to happen and must be stopped whenever possible.
Just can't relate, so could be relevant. I don't think I know much about it to make a decision whether it matters or not.
I think it is important to remember them, but I think with everything going on in people's lives and just overall everything, I just don't think it's something people really remember to remember, if that makes any sense.
As an international student, I do not know much about it, but the only thing I know is pretty much that it's a day where we remember fallen soldiers, and the day is from morning 11 to 1.
Because we have to honor those people, and it's just something that we do in honor of them.
I feel we could do a little bit more. Maybe put more emphasis on the 1 or 5 minute long moment of silence to help really drive home more just the impact that this day had on the rest of Western world history.
Meanwhile, how are children who fled war in Ukraine feeling as we get ready to mark Remembrance Day? Ralph Brown School has a large population of Ukrainian newcomer children in grades K to 8. They attend the school's English-Ukrainian bilingual stream. CBC's Wendy Parker was at the school's Remembrance Day assembly this morning.
We have a total population of about 350 students, and of that we have 135, almost 40% in our Ukrainian English bilingual program, and of those we have welcomed about 122 newcomer Ukrainian students since the war began in Ukraine.
I seek strength, not to be greater than my friend, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself.
There's lots of actual prep work that goes into planning of this, partly for our English program students, because we need to teach them, for us as Canadians, war sometimes doesn't feel almost real if we haven't had that experience. For the Ukrainian students, we have to let them know why we're doing this, that we are honoring their country and their freedom that the soldiers are fighting for, but also what to expect. We have our O Canada, we have our land acknowledgement that we will do, and then we have some visuals, some songs, and what is all of this mean in the big scope of things, and how do we respond to it?
I think Remembrance Day, it's important because we must remember every young man who fought it in First World War, Second, every war. Because if they wasn't fighting, we will not live in peace and in freedom.
And in the Remembrance Day, that's I know there's so many people die. That is not good because there's some one's the the dad, some son.
It is important. It is how I say it. We need to remember the guys who fight for us, who give our freedom. We don't need to forget it because they give their life for us.
It's really just important that they have a connection somehow, because it's important that we don't forget this. This is something that, for us, we think often that it happens in the past, but it's sadly happening today. And we need to be mindful of how these things start. And some of the conversations we've been having here this year is kindness and respect. And when we have that, no war ever started with kindness and respect.
CBC's Riley Lachuk joins us now with a look at the weather. Riley, how's the forecast looking for Remembrance Day?
Yeah, we'll get right to it, Emily. Those of us that like to go to the more outdoor ceremonies, definitely going to be not the coldest and not the snowiest Remembrance Day that we've seen. But generally, you're going to want to maybe put some layers on if you're heading outside tomorrow. Partly cloudy skies by 11 o'clock tomorrow morning when you're heading to those ceremonies. -1, so yeah, dancing around the freezing mark again tomorrow. We'll see winds out of the south, 15 to 30 kilometers an hour. So winds not looking like there'd be much of a factor either. So yeah, weather, not too bad in terms of getting out for Remembrance Day tomorrow. We've seen partly cloudy skies. We did see a few sunny breaks this afternoon in Winnipeg, but we have seen a few lake effect flurries coming off of the lakes through the Interlake through the late afternoon. I did have a slim chance of a flurry in my forecast for the city of Winnipeg this afternoon. We didn't see any of those snowflakes hitting the ground, but yeah, a few flurries still dancing around here and there. But as we get into the weekend, things are looking like we're going to see a lot more sunshine as we head into the weekend. So starting tomorrow morning, mainly sunny skies, still some lingering cloud cover through eastern Manitoba and into northwestern Ontario. That will still clear out as we get into the later part of the afternoon. Bright sunshine by the time we get to about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Sun setting, of course, at about 4:45, 4:50. So yeah, we're going to see a sunny sky as we get through tomorrow. But then look at this. We have an area of instability along a warm front, a low pressure system bringing some snow and some rain early in the morning on Sunday to southern Manitoba, still impacting parts of the north by the time we get into the early part of Monday morning. Nothing in terms of accumulating snow, and our temperatures will be warm enough that some of this will likely be falling as rain by the time we get into the day on Sunday. So yeah, we're looking at a little bit of messy weather this weekend, but the trade-off is we get much warmer conditions as we head into Monday. You can see this warmer pocket of air starting to move a little bit further to the north by the time we get to Tuesday. Wednesday, we start to moderate a little bit, but still above seasonal conditions through much of the province as we get into the middle of next week. -1 right now in Winnipeg. Calm winds, we did get up to 0 this afternoon, down to -5 overnight tonight. South winds at 10, so a cool night tonight, but certainly not out of the question in terms of below seasonal for this time of the year. -2 first thing in the morning under a partly cloudy sky. Winds not much of a factor either through the day tomorrow, and getting up to 0 once again. Mostly sunny skies by the time we get into the late afternoon, and the sunny trend does continue. There's that blip on Sunday with that chance of morning flurries, a high of 4 degrees. 4 degrees as well on Monday with a mainly sunny sky, and mainly sunny skies continuing into Tuesday, a high of 7 degrees, well above seasonal for this time of the year. Emily, there's something else happening tomorrow that you're probably going to want to know how to dress for. I'll have details on that when I come back.
Can't wait. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, the best in the CFL's West is about to be settled. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are getting ready for the CFL Western Final against the BC Lions. The winner of tomorrow's game will go on to the Grey Cup game in Hamilton. Bombers quarterback Zach Polaris says he's been enjoying the moment with his teammates.
I enjoy getting to be around our teammates, for another week, right? Obviously, the magnitude of the game picks up a little bit. It's a do or die situation, so it's not going to be hard to find the adrenaline for the game. But I just really enjoy the extra time, being around the team, being able to prepare with one another, and another shot to go out and execute.
Kickoff is tomorrow at 5:30. If Winnipeg wins, it'll be the team's 4th consecutive appearance at the Grey Cup. Still to come, Gaza officials say hospitals came under fire from Israeli airstrikes. Meanwhile, Israel says Hamas has tunnels beneath Al-Shifa Hospital. That story's coming up. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. The Hamas-run health ministry says Israeli airstrikes hit 3 Gaza hospitals, including 2 where displaced people had taken refuge. Meanwhile, Hamas has continued to fire rockets at Israel. Israel says it won't agree to a ceasefire until Hamas releases the 200-plus hostages it's been holding for a month now. And once again, at the Egyptian border, Canadians trying to flee Gaza were left stranded. CBC's Tom Parry reports.
People continue to gather on the Gaza side of the Rafah crossing, hoping to get in, including Canadians. Akram al-Sabah's daughter back in Canada has been worried for her father. He traveled all the way from northern Gaza to be in Rafah today.
In Gaza, situation is a very bad situation over there. You can't find food, you can't find bread, you can't find the water. But I say thanks for God. I'm here now in the Rafah border, you know. I feel a little bit better, you know, because soon maybe open the door for us.
The Rafah crossing remained closed today. More than 250 Canadians had their name on a list to get out. At Canada's embassy in Cairo, Canada's ambassador talked about the impact the closure was having on getting Canadians out of Gaza.
It's very difficult. It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It's a bit, I would say, lost in translation. You know what's happening at the border? Oftentimes it's disagreements between the different parties.
At the embassy, diplomatic staff have been helping Canadians and their families get their paperwork in order and plot their next move. For some, that next step is going to Canada, but others aren't so sure.
We need to take a deep breath. We need to take it slowly before we move back home to Canada. Like, we just need to, you know, we can't be moving from one place to another. So we are just trying to settle down right now, figure out as a family what we're going to do next.
The Canadian Embassy hopes Canadians will start leaving Gaza in greater numbers. So far, just over 100 Canadians have managed to get out, but hundreds more remain trapped. Tom Parry, CBC News, Cairo.
Canadians who have made it out of Gaza are now facing a daunting journey home. Many are dealing with complicated flight connections. CBC's Kimberly Molina has one family story.
Noor Al-Batniji blows kisses to her father, whose face fills a computer screen in her family's living room in Canada. She smiles, relieved that he's finally safe in Egypt.
I was elated. Like, I can't even imagine what he had gone through for a month.
I feel that I born again. I was really, you feel anytime you can get hit by missiles or...
Hani Al-Batniji has spent much of the past month fleeing for his life. He fled from one home to another with family members, including his brother.
I see the dead every day, every minute, not every day. Imagine when I was in Rafah, we was in a house, 120 people in one room.
I couldn't even ask him if you were safe because I knew the answer was just no, it's not safe.
Yeah, we're scared about that, yeah.
I have to pay...
The family, too, often felt helpless on this side of the globe. His kids spent countless hours on the phone with Global Affairs Canada.
And they'd say, we're doing our best. And then I would call again, and they'd add little notes in their notes to tell me, okay, we're updating where your dad has been.
On Tuesday, he was among the first group of Canadians to cross the Rafah border. What came next was anything but simple. The trip includes several flights from Cairo to Casablanca, then Montreal, and finally, the drive to Ottawa.
What's the first thing you guys are going to do when he steps through that door?
Hug him. I'm going to get up and hug him.
Kimberly Molina, CBC News, Ottawa.
Pressure is building for Joe Biden to call for an outright ceasefire in the Israeli-Hamas war. American diplomats are warning the U.S. president of growing anger in Arab countries over his position on the conflict. CBC's Cameron McIntosh has the latest from Washington.
All along, we've heard some Democrats say they are not comfortable with the scale of the Israeli response. Now CNN is reporting it has obtained 2 cables from U.S. diplomats in the Middle East. One in Amman reportedly raises concern the U.S. is, quote, losing Arab publics for a generation. Similar concerns have also been expressed by the embassy in Cairo. Now, President Biden has refused to publicly call for an outright ceasefire, calling that untenable. He's been pushing for pauses in fighting. Now, after weeks of urging, Israel is agreeing to 6-hour tactical pauses to allow civilian evacuation. Still, there are growing signs the administration is not comfortable with what is happening in Gaza. This was Secretary of State Antony Blinken this morning in India.
Much more needs to be done to protect civilians and to make sure that humanitarian assistance reaches them. Far too many Palestinians have been killed. Far too many have suffered these past weeks. And we want to do everything possible to prevent harm to them and to maximize the assistance that gets to them.
As for Biden's support on this, an AP poll today found only 50% of Democrats approve of his handling of the war. With young people, that drops significantly. He's also facing calls from aid agencies, unions, and most recently, a big group of 2020 Biden campaign workers to call for a ceasefire. So this is becoming an issue in his base. All while congressional Democrats demand more transparency about what weapons are being sent to Israel. The bind for Biden, he's facing growing backlash while publicly still trying to support a longtime U.S. ally. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Washington.
Edmonton police believe a man and his 11-year-old son were victims of an intentional shooting. They were shot out yesterday in a parked vehicle and died on the scene. Police have identified the father as 41-year-old Harpreet Upal, a high-level gang member involved in the drug trade. They say his son was not simply caught in the crossfire, but was deliberately shot. A second unrelated boy who was also in the car was unharmed. Investigators say there have been previous attempts on the father's life. Police say it's the latest example of escalating gang violence in Edmonton. Air Canada is apologizing for a string of incidents involving passengers with disabilities. That story coming up. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Air Canada is vowing a change for the better in its service for people with disabilities. A series of incidents has come to light showing flights were badly prepared. The airline issued an apology yesterday. CBC's Ashley Burke has the story.
Ryan LeChance says he felt dehumanized and humiliated after Air Canada staff dropped him in the aisle.
They treat us like we're cargo, and they just whipped us off and on the plane the same way they did the luggage.
Now a public apology.
We know that we've let those customers down, and for that we are truly, truly sorry.
Federal ministers summoned the airline to Ottawa after a series of CBC News stories about the treatment of passengers who use wheelchairs.
Not only do airlines, need to be held accountable, they need to a lot better.
A Marketplace hidden camera investigation captured Air Canada workers struggling to get Alessia DiVirgilio on board a plane.
Please, guys,
I felt humiliated.
In another story, passenger Rodney Hodgins said he had to crawl down the aisle.
I'm just wondering what you personally think of hearing a story of someone having to drag themselves across an aircraft to get off.
I think my personal view reflects the view of everybody at Air Canada that it's not acceptable.
Air Canada said it's speeding ahead with changes.
We are investing in training for all of our colleagues that are involved with lifting customers into chairs on board aircraft, and also investing in even more equipment.
It also says passengers with accessibility needs will board first, and wheelchairs will be stored in the cabin when possible. Some say they'll believe it when they see it.
When I show up on a plane and I don't have to hold my breath, I'm wondering if I'm going to get dropped or my wheelchair is going to get damaged. I'll feel a lot better.
Disability advocate Mayan Ziv hopes it's the beginning of much more.
I think that Air Canada has violated the trust of disabled passengers, and it's going to take a lot more than promises and statements to prove that they can earn our loyalty as passengers.
Air Canada also says it will now invest in annual training for staff, and if someone's wheelchair or aid is stowed under the plane, it created a tracking system so they can see if it's on board, and if not, they say the plane won't take off. Ministers say they're meeting next month with Air Canada again to see if there's been change. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Weather Update is brought to you by the Art and Beauty of the National Ballet of Ukraine, January 29th at the Burton Cummings Theatre. Tickets at nationalballetukraine.com.
Well, Riley Leitchuk's back from the CBC Weather Desk. Big Blue Bombers game tomorrow.
Of course, West Final happening tomorrow, and I know a lot of people are heading out to that game. I believe it's almost sold out at this point.
Wow.
Dress for it if you're going to go. I'll show you why at the maps. And yeah, 5:30 kickoff tomorrow for that game. I say dress for it. It's not going to be cold by any stretch for this time of the year anyway. Certainly not the coldest football game any of us have probably gone to, but -2 at kickoff, -3 by halftime. I say dress for it because if you think you've got enough clothes leaving the house, throw an extra layer on, because by the time you get there, you sit down, yeah, you're probably going to start to feel a little bit cold just sitting there, not, moving around. So keep that in mind. -2 in Eli, -1 at the airport right now, 0 at the Fork still. That was our forecast high for today. Temperatures dancing around the freezing mark across much of southern Manitoba at the moment. -3 into the Sprague region, -5 right now in Churchill, and above freezing right now. +1 in Norway House. So we're going to see this cloud cover start to move out as we get into the night tonight, but a lingering chance of a flurry still in Kenora as well as in Red Lake through the evening tonight. Temperatures around -5 to -7 degrees. Very slim chance, I think, still across some parts of southern Manitoba. Otherwise, a partly cloudy sky tonight. -5 in Winnipeg, -3 in Emerson, and a pair of -6s into the southeast corner of the province tonight. The southwest looking much the same as well. -10 in Swan River, -8 in Dauphin. These are the regions where we'll see skies clearing a little bit earlier, allowing temperatures really to start to drop a little bit more as we get into the night tonight. -3 in Portage la Prairie, and a slim chance we could see some flurries through Thompson and Norway House, -4s and -2s, -5 in Flin Flon tonight, and -7 in Churchill. Mainly sunny skies on the way for tomorrow as well. Temperatures for the most part above 0. We'll see a much brighter day on the way really province-wide tomorrow than what we've seen over the past couple of days. 2 degrees in Swan River, 3s for both Dauphin and Brandon under the sunshine. Wind's not much of a factor tomorrow either. Around the freezing mark through much of the southeastern part of the province, and same goes to northwestern Ontario. Still a little cloud to push out through the morning, but we'll start to see some sunny breaks, Emily, through the later part of the day.
Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, we all remember how the pandemic pushed many gym classes outdoors. Now research shows the outdoor gymnasium helped not just the kids, but the teachers too. We'll have more on that coming up. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Navigating the pandemic was hugely challenging to everyone in the education system in countless ways. The need to space students out led to gymnasiums becoming classrooms. PhD student Jordan Laidlaw interviewed Manitoba phys ed teachers to find out what that was like. Here's his conversation with Janet Stewart.
Jordan Laidlaw, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You're a music teacher yourself. You're a teacher yourself, a music teacher. When you began these interviews, what were you expecting to hear from gym teachers?
Well, I'll be honest, when I started the inquiry with Dr. Johnson, specifically about phys ed teachers teaching outdoors during the COVID-19 pandemic, I was expecting to hear a lot of stress and some of the challenges accommodating the provincial health regulations, because a lot of the academic literature that's out there right now has been really illuminating a lot of these challenges. So that was the expectation, but we were both pleasantly surprised when we heard all the positive feedback that phys ed teachers were sharing about teaching and learning outdoors, both on their own personal health, but also on their student bodies.
Can you elaborate on that a bit? What they liked teaching outside? What did they notice?
Well, during the pandemic, again, I'm a music teacher, but music and phys ed were very uniquely affected by COVID-19 protocols. With music, no singing indoors, no wind instruments, and phys ed was also affected largely in that music rooms and gyms were being co-opted to become new classrooms in different spaces. So when the phys ed teachers kind of reflected on their experiences, they really shared how difficult it was to teach indoors in general. If someone touches a ball, you have to disinfect it immediately. There was limited amount of pedagogies they could engage in. So, or just limited space, 2 meter physical distancing. And it was really inorganic and challenging. But when they took kids outdoors, it really alleviated a lot of these restrictions. The kids could spread out. There was a sense of normalcy. And in addition to just being an alleviation from these protocols, there was a lot of just intrinsic benefits of being outdoors. The sun, like just sunlight and fresh air, and just a real appreciation for nature.
Now, because you're a teacher too, how has that influenced your thinking?
Yeah, so again, I am a music teacher, and after doing a lot of the transcriptions of the conversations with the participants, I kept reading over and over and doing the thematic analysis about teachers talking about how great it was to be outdoors, and just a relief from fluorescent lighting and so many other things that we experience day to day, that it has influenced my practice. I actually invested in a class set of briefcase xylophones, and we have been doing quite a bit of outdoor music, and I love it, the kids love it, and it's been really great.
What, have you noticed any changes in the kids' behavior?
It really depends, you know, like, I think flexibility is a great thing, and even what some of the participants had said in their interviews, like they love being outdoors, but they also love being in their gym. And same thing with me, I love doing outdoor music, I love being in my music room, and it's great to have that flexibility. But by and large, yeah, I'd say kids love to really be outside and play and explore the natural world.
Jordan Laylaw, thank you so much for your observations and your time today.
All right, thank you so much.
Still ahead, Riley Lachuk's back with your 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
So sunset times are going to go earlier and earlier in the afternoon. So today, sunset at 4:52, but look at what happens by the time we get to 3 weeks from now, the beginning of December, sun setting before 4:30. This is about the earliest that we'll see the sun setting before the days start to get longer again after the 21st of December. Days getting to about 8 hours of daylight in length. So looking at your forecast for tomorrow, we're looking at a sunny 0. Could be a bit breezy with that chance of morning flurries come Sunday. Then we have another chance of flurries later on in the week, 7 degrees for Tuesday, and then rounding out about 4 and 5 by the time we get to the end of next week. Well, these 3 little pigs got lost in Texas recently, but they managed to escape the clutches of the big bad wolf.
They found shelter under a car in a residential neighborhood. Here's your daily lift.
I look under the car and I see just fur. And to me, it looks like a gray dog.
The owners of the car took a shine to the swine who were caught on a home security camera and fed them tortillas. The family members have been looking for the pigs' owners, but so far haven't had any luck. They're continuing their search, hoping the pigs will remain pets. They've also contacted a wildlife rescue group that's willing to help if the owners aren't identified. Well, Riley, at least they didn't huff and puff and blow the house down.
True, that is very true.
I guess that's the wolf, actually, but everything was fine in the end. That was the CBC Winnipeg News at 6. We'll be back at 11. Hope you have a good evening.